All right. Yeehaw, everyone. Welcome to a special one take Shadow in the Badlands expansion reveal review. So, we're doing this all in one take. No editing involved. I had to plan out how I was going to do this, but essentially, we got a new expansion right on the horizon. Wild West theme. The Wild West theme is kind of unique to the Warcraft world because there are actually very few cowboys and Wild West stuff in World of Warcraft, whereas like a lot of other themes have been explored, but not the Wild West. But Hearthstone's going there, and I'm gonna say something that'll potentially immediately land me in trouble with Sheriff Barrelbrim. What I'm going to be landing in trouble with is I think this set's kind of weak on the reveal here. So why is it weak? Well, stay tuned and find out. So the reason why is because there's two main mechanics of this set. There is Singleton, which is the Highlander mechanic. You run 30 unique cards in your deck, or rather, if your deck has no duplicates at the time that you play the Singleton card, then you do something really cool. Now, for a multitude of reasons, but the primary reason being, the strong cards, you want to have two of those in your deck. And it seems like right now we are in a format where there are some really strong cards, so you want to put two of them in your deck. It would be really, really difficult for the Singleton card to be good enough in order to overcome that restriction. So basically, the Highlander card would have to be so incredibly good that you would have to not put all the super ridiculously good cards out there right now into your deck. The second reason why is the second main mechanic of the set is excavation. And excavation is a value mechanic where if you play a card where you excavate a treasure, then that means you get a random treasure. A treasure is going to be like slightly better than the average card. It's similar to a lackey way back in the evil set. So whenever you see excavate a treasure, I think you want to read it as draw or discover, well, generate a good card, a better than average card. You generate it among huge list of treasures, which I'll show in greater detail later. But you get the common treasure, the one cost, and the uncommon, the two cost, the rare rather. Then the epic treasure, the three cost, and then five of the classes are the classes that actually get a legendary treasure. They're class specific treasure. Which I'll just remind myself real quick as to what those are. That'd be Death Knight, Mage, Rogue, Warlock, and Warrior. I'll have to remember that in a little bit. So anyways, let's get right to the cards. And we'll go ahead and begin with the mayor. The sheriff, rather. This guy's one of the main characters in the set. Sheriff Barrelbrim. Sheriff Barrelbrim. 4 mana, 4/4 legendary battle cry. If you have 20 or less health, open the Badlands jail. And so maybe I'm going to go into Blizzard jail by immediately saying, kind of looks like a weak set on a first glance. Now this card is actually pretty solid though. It is like Maiev Shadow Song from the past, which was also neutral, which also did something similar to the Badlands Jail. Badlands Jail is a location that makes a dormant go dormant for 3 turns with 3 durability. So Maiev Shadow Song had a battle cry that made a minion go dormant for 3 turns. Sheriff Barrelbrim can do that 3 times. Now that's a lot of value. Clearly a good card if a Singleton deck, a Highlander deck, happens to work well. Highlander decks tend to be slower, they tend to be more value oriented, not always, and therefore they might want this stalling card in their deck. One of the classes that are Highlander is going to be Priest, and we see Elise from it. Also confirmed to be in this set is going to be Reno, some sort of Reno that's not normal Reno, but, other Reno with cool effect. But here's Elise. Priest Legendary, 8 mana 5/5. Elise Badlands Savior. Battle Cry. If your deck has no duplicates, summon 4/4 copies of 4 random minions in your deck. So clearly with this card, you're going to want to have some big effects, big titans in your deck, big cards that'll have really cool effects, even if they don't come in the full size, such as Death Rattle cards. So you want the Amenthul, you want the Yogg-Saron, you play the Elise. It's perhaps a game-winning play, but if it's not a game-winning play, then there's no real reason to be playing your Priest deck as a Highlander deck in that case. So it's a compelling deck to play Elise and then win the game, but I'm not really sure how desirable that is for you to build your deck to have that drawback of just being a singleton deck. Especially when you look at the control priests right now, which have quite a lot of good cards in them. And control decks rarely want to just have big stats for 8 mana. It's like, yeah, it is 21 worth of stats. Plus, you get all the cool effects out there when you play Elise, but at the end of the day, these types of decks generally aren't looking for just being able to put out a bunch of big stats. You got Hunter, which is also going to be a Highlander deck, and Highlander Hunter actually worked in the past. They had Bran, the 7 mana card that summoned a King Crush, and that was a really strong effect. But will Theldirin the Lost be a similarly big effect? That's a 4 mana 3/4 legendary. Battlecry, if your deck has no duplicates, gain immune this turn and attack all enemies. So, meant to be extra good with hand buffing, and hand buffing appears to be a mechanic that Hunter's going to have. But to build your Hunter deck to be Highlander, to hand buff and to benefit the few hand buff cards out there, which are Hollowhound, which is pretty good, and Theldirin, but do we have that many other things? Especially if you're going to be building a one of each card, seems like a losing proposition. I've heard also that there's some sort of insane card running around in the meta. Insane card, which does something similar. Anyways, you can buff Theldirin with the other card they revealed for Hunter. Messenger Buzzard, 2 mana 1/2 beast. Death Rattle, draw a beast, give minions in your hand +1/+1. So it's like the Alliance Bannerman, but at a 1 mana discount. So that's pretty good. Clearly, if you're going to be building a hand buffing deck, you're going to be playing both of these cards, Theldirin and Messenger Buzzard. Tough to assume that you'll actually run Messenger Buzzard in the current big beast deck, because this is a beast that is not big. So we've gotten one of the main mechanics out of the way. That is the idea of these outlaws and how they're Highlander, with Elise and Theldirin being the first to be revealed. Now, the other main concept here is there are 5 other classes who are the townsfolk who are out mining for azurite, and this is where the excavation mechanic comes in. Let's take a look at all these excavation cards. First time you excavate, you get a common card. It's going to be the 1 mana 2/2 rush, the 1 mana deal 3, the 1 mana restore 3 draw a card, the 1 mana get 2 coins, or the 1 mana discover a 2 cost card, it costs 0. So all these cards are better than average for 1 mana. After you discover that card, you get to discover the... Not after you discover. After you randomly get one of these cards, you'll... when you play another Excavate card, you'll randomly get a 2-cost card, which is either the 2 mana 2/4, which summons a random 2-cost minion, and has taunt. It's pretty sweet. The 2 mana 2/1 that comes with a sap. The Glowing Glyph, which I actually think is the only bad card here, but gives a minion and its neighbors +1/+2, sets up to +3/+6 in stats. And I say that's bad because, well, some of the decks aren't going to have minions all the time. You got the 2 mana deal 3 to a minion in the enemy hero, which some of the value-oriented classes aren't going to really like either. It's just essentially 2 mana deal 3, since the damage to the hero doesn't usually matter when you're running these Excavate decks. reason why I would say you wouldn't be looking for like damage to the face in an excavate deck is because it strikes me as a value over time mechanic. And then you've got Azurite Chunk, all these Azurite cards at the end. They essentially give you a slight upgrade of a card at a mana discount. Cool. On the 3 mana slot, the epics, you've actually got some really good cards. You have Ogre Fist Boulder, insane location, good stats for the cost. Set of minion stats to 6 through 7, and it's 2 durability for 3 mana. Really strong. You have way better Ziliax, Motherlode Drake, 3 mana 4/3, Rush Divine Shield, Lifesteal. Steelhide Mole, 3 mana 2/7 Taunt Reborn. Can't be targeted. You've got 3 mana, deal 3 damage to all enemies, and you get the 3 mana Discover a 5. And then finally, in the classes that are the townsfolk, that's the Death Knight, Mage, Rogue, Warlock, and Warrior, you have a legendary Excavate Treasure, which is presumably going to be the reason why you're going to be running Excavate decks. And I would imagine that you'll only want to Excavate in the Death Knight, Mage, Rogue, Warlock, and Warrior card decks because of that. And again, the Excavate mechanic, like, it inherently seems a little bit weak, especially since we're going to take a look at some of those excavation cards. But an example of the card that is, the legendary for the Death Knight is the Azurite Rat, 4 mana 5/5, Elemental Beast, Battlecry, resurrect your highest cost minion, give it +2/+2, Reborn, and Lifesteal. So clearly really good, but the downside is you're building your entire deck in order to get this Excavation Treasure. So your deck is going to just run a bunch of these excavation cards in an attempt to excavate the rat. So can your deck be that good? Can this deck archetype beat out the rest right now? And my initial thought is seems unlikely. But looking at the Death Knight cards, is we got the Frost Rune, 7 mana 7/7 Harrowing Ox. Taunt, Battlecry, if you've excavated twice, your next card this turn costs 7 less. So, Frost, 7 card, you immediately think Frostworm's Fury. If the excavation cards for Death Knight are all Frost, then sure, we might be able to see some sort of Frost off branch. Though that would be kind of difficult to imagine. Like a Frost deck toning down its aggression in order to go for value. You might call it a package, but I would call it a deck. You have to run quite a lot of these excavation cards in order to excavate 4 times. That would probably be the goal of the deck, because you want to get that legendary treasure, presumably. Especially when you look at the other excavate cards. Like, what's an example of an excavate card? Reap What You Sow, the 3 mana Frost Rune. Deal 3 damage, excavate a treasure. So, excavate a treasure apparently looks to be taking the place of draw a card or discover a card. A treasure is slightly better than discovering a card or drawing a card because you're randomly getting a card, but on average, that card's pretty good. So it's a value mechanic. Clearly, if you're going to be excavating, you'll put this into your deck. You'll put all the other excavate cards, or at least the ones that are, not terrible, into your deck, and then build your deck around the excavation at the end. We'll take a look at the neutral card. This is very reminiscent of the Cable Rat. The 2 mana 1/1 Battlecry, excavate a treasure of the Kobold Miner. So this is an example of the bad card that you're going to be playing when you are playing the excavate deck. You get to have a 2 mana 1/1 draw a card, quote unquote. So that does not give me great confidence in this archetype. Alongside the idea that, excavation it's very funneled into the archetype of value. And the value archetype, as I've finally learned over these many years, it takes a lot for your excavation value deck to be good. Mage has a Blast Mage Minor. 6 mana 4/4 Battlecry, excavate a treasure for each card in your hand, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. Huge buff on Meteorologist, but Meteorologist sure was a bad card. Clearly, this is going to be a value deck as well, because, I mean, this is a big hint. Mages are expected to have a lot of cards in their hand, which means that they're expected to be a value deck, a control deck. And that's going to be a tough ask because you're being pit against exactly the mini spell school deck. Can your value deck possibly be better than a Sif deck? Seems unlikely to me, but we'll see. We got some other cards out there. We got a Trolley Problem, which is an awesome flavor card for Warlock. 3 mana, discard your lowest cost spell. Summon 2/3/3 tram cars with Rush. So it's 3 mana with a 6/6 worth of Rush, and you discard a spell, which may or may not be good depending on whether or not there's spells that benefit from being discarded. It's featuring the other mechanic in the set of Quick Draw, which is if you draw the card, then you get a benefit if you play the card immediately after you draw it, or generate it. So if you discover a Trolley Problem, for example, that's a pretty good card to discover because then you can immediately play it. Reminds me a lot of Outcast. A little bit different. Outcast is if it's in the left or your right side, then it has some sort of benefit. Quick Draw is if it enters your hand, it has a benefit, which is kind of like it coming to your right side. A little bit worse than Outcast in the sense that if it slides over to your left, you don't get a benefit then. The other quick draw card we see as an example is the Shaman Dehydrate. 3 mana, lifesteal, deal 4 damage to a minion. Quick draw costs 1. So a lot like Demon Hunter's Eye Beam in a class that unfortunately draws quite a lot less. Hard to imagine the reactive cards being good with quick draw. Shaman's also got Living Prairie, 5 mana 5/4 elemental. Battlecry, if you played an elemental last turn, summon 2/3/3 cows with Rush. So that's a lot of stats, and clearly a payoff for playing an elemental shaman. So we can expect that there will be an elemental shaman around. Seeing these cows reminded me of one Pro ZD with his awesome cow videos. Very good. Love that video, by the way. Or summon dairy cow, and then I milk it, and then I sell the milk to the grocery market, and I get some bucks, which I use to produce cheese in my factory. All right, I think that's all of it, other than the card that you're going to get when you log into Hearthstone. Thunderbringer. 8 mana, 6/6, taunt, death rattle, summon an elemental and beast from your deck. It's a legendary, and it's an elemental beast. A strange card for the one to give away for the early part of the expansion, because it seems to fit into really specific decks, such as Big Hunter. Big Hunter is actually good with Thunderbringer, it seems. It is a big beast after all, so you really like summoning this early with the discounts to the beasts or randomly getting it, by pulling it from your deck. When you pull the Thunderbringer from your deck, then you pull another big beast and another elemental from your deck, and the elemental is either exactly Ragnaros or, oh no, what's the name of that other of the colossal elemental? Oh my god, my brain. But yeah, you get those cards specifically, and it's a pretty good idea. It's Neptulon. Yeah, Neptulon's pretty insane when you pull it out for free. So yeah, congratulations. Everyone gets a Thunderbringer. Only big hunters are happy. So that's your first look at Showdown in the Badlands. Cool little expansion. It's going to be showcased some more at BlizzCon, which I will be attending. For those of you also going to BlizzCon, perhaps I'll see you there. Launches November 14th. Cinematic trailer going to be at BlizzCon, along with other cool stuff. Gonna be revealing and reviewing the cards as they come out because it's fun. Even though I certainly haven't played Hearthstone in some time, and I can't really say that I will necessarily play much Shadow in the Badlands. Always fun to look at the cards as they're coming out and talk about them, think about how they might be cool with you all. This time around, it looks like the decks are going to be fairly straightforward to build in terms of their archetypes. In the form of the Townsfolk decks, that's the decks that want to excavate. You got Death Knight, Mage, Rogue, Warlock, and Warrior. So clearly 5 of the archetypes that they're going to be trying to push here are going to be Excavate Death Knight, Excavate Mage, Excavate Rogue, Excavate Warlock, and Excavate Warrior. And similarly, the Outlaws, which are the Singleton, they're going to try to push a Highlander Demon Hunter, Highlander Druid, Highlander Hunter, Highlander Paladin, Highlander Priest, and Highlander Shaman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, there's 11 classes in Hearthstone. Right. Yeah, that's kind of cool. 6 Highlander classes. Now, very, very difficult to imagine that the Highlander deck and the Excavate deck will be good, but I would like to be proven wrong. So prove me wrong, Blizzard. Prove me wrong.